Okay, here we go. It's the pink and orange crew today at Curveball. I am so excited to welcome my next guest, Bruce Cryer, because if resilience were a sport, he would have pitched a no-hitter during a doubleheader on crutches while singing, probably. At the height of his career as the CEO of HeartMath, which we're for sure going to talk about because it's super cool, Bruce got slammed with what he calls his 9 innings of curveballs, like life grenades, bladder cancer, a staph infection. Those are the worst. His mom died. He got divorced. He had double hip replacement surgery. How's your tap dancing career going, by the way? And yeah, all within a 2-year span. That is a lot of change, physically and emotionally, all at once. He stepped down from his role, and by all accounts, he could have disappeared quietly into recovery, right? And that would have been fine. But nope, not Bruce. He came back singing, literally dancing on 2 titanium hips, no less. These days, he's teaching people how to tap into the creativity and vitality that's been sitting dormant inside of them, no matter how many curveballs life hurls their way. From Broadway performer to Stanford faculty, fancy, and from corporate boardrooms to hospital ballrooms, Bruce brings heart, humor, and a whole human healing wherever he goes. Bruce, welcome to Curveball. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Heather. That is probably the most unique introduction I've just about ever had. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Would you travel with me to other podcasts and other events to do the introduction? It's very delightful.
Yes, I'll be like your bodyguard. It'll be really fun. People will have to go through me. You'll have to say,
exactly,
like, hey, you have to talk to my person.
Check with her. Yeah.
And then the thing, and we can have a lot of fun with your podcast host. That would be amazing. I'm so glad. So you had a lot of things happen at once, and you called it your 9 innings of curveballs. But like, what inning do you think knocked you the hardest? And how did you find your way? Like, because you get one thing, bladder cancer, then you're like, crap, then I got a staph infection. I'm assuming in the hospital, which is the worst place to catch an infection, right? So it was just like, no. And then you're just like, okay, I can deal. And it's like, nope, here's one more thing. Nope, here's one more thing. Nope, here's one more thing. So like, did any one of these hit you the hardest, or did you even have time to catch your breath between the curveballs?
Wow, what a great question. It's hard to really pinpoint a single one, but there's no doubt that I actually had a series of staph infections. I had 4, and the last one was in my blood. And so,
it's
one thing to have staph infections, and then they say, well, we'll give you an antibiotic. We can't do the treatment this week for the cancer, but don't worry, it will be fine. And the next week it was fine. But then a week after that, I'd have it again. And then the next week it'd be fine. And I was going back and forth, but with no symptoms. So it wasn't too bad. Then one day the doctor calls and says, I'm 90% sure you're going to need to go to the hospital because it looks like you've got staph in your blood. Now, I was smart enough about healthcare to know that's a life-threatening condition.
Right.
And sure enough, I did. And so I left for the hospital right away and was down there for a few days. But I didn't feel terrible. I was everything was getting checked, trying to find, why do I keep getting staph infections? It's floating around. They found cells in my bloodstream. Not a good thing. But I got past that. There was a moment about 4 weeks later where I was having to infuse a strong antibiotic into my arm from a PICC line, from a drip bag. It took 3 hours every morning, 3 hours every night, 6 hours a day, and that lasted for 6 weeks. About 4 weeks into it, they forgot to restock my supplies. And I'm having to call the pharmacy to tell them they're supposed to send supplies. And the doctor there'd been a slip up with the doctor. This was not supposed to be my job. And I called the doctor and said, what happened? The doctor's not in, of course. I talked to someone who I guess was a nurse. I go through this long story of, I'm having to remind you guys that you're supposed to be calling in to Walgreens about my stuff. And
but my life healing, like this very serious thing I'm going through. Like,
and
I don't think you can buy antibiotics on the black market.
I don't think so.
On the street.
Like, I laid out this whole thing and I stopped and there was no response at all from the nurse. I was like, are you there? She said, mm-hmm. Did you hear me? Mm-hmm. And I wanted to say, how is your Facebook feed doing right now? Because you don't seem to be paying any attention to me. And it was one of those moments of, seriously? I'm the guy with the life-threatening condition because I got staph floating around in my blood. It's not supposed to be my job. The doctors should have figured this out. And your attitude is like really not helpful. So that was a moment. But the bigger issue, I think that was the toughest one, was as the realization was dawning that this life that I had been part of for more than 20 years, helping to be one of the founders of HeartMath, in the leadership since day one, then CEO later, several years later, and had been CEO for 11 years, that I needed to change that. That once I was well, and I was still, it still was at the staph infection phase, there was still a lot more to go. There's still another year of major stuff.
Oh yeah, they say staph is the gift that just keeps on giving.
Yeah. So as I began to ponder this, what had felt like an unthinkable thought, that what do you mean you're not going to stay CEO of HeartMath? That's crazy. Right. You wanted to do this this was your life's work, dude. That's why you got involved in this. Right. But I couldn't shake that feeling that there was another phase of my life I was supposed to enter, and it wasn't just about what the last 20 years has been. And of course, there was also my marriage, which wasn't the war. Luckily, that wasn't like we weren't crashing and burning, but we were also realizing we needed to go our separate ways. But it was the decision to step down as CEO, because it's one thing to go through all those things, but if you recover, it's a past story. When you're leaving a situation where some people don't understand at all why you would make that decision.
Right.
Because they've never gone through such an extreme set of circumstances in a relatively short amount of time. And I try to have compassion for the people who were feeling betrayed by me. And I'd think to myself, well, you've had allergies. I know your allergies are annoying every spring, but trust me, that's not the same as what I've gone through in the last. I never would say it that bluntly, right? But inside myself, I thought, well, I wish you could rise above this comparison. Like, well, yes. It can't be any worse. So how could you possibly feel like you have to change your life? But that was hard, because it was long-time relationships, long-time friends, not all of whom were in that vibe, but some of whom were like, it felt kind of resentment. And so that was hard. That was a hard one to get over, so to speak, because it wasn't a healing exactly like the body could heal.
No, and like the story you read is like, I was a CEO, I was taken down, I healed myself using my own methodology, by the way, and I came back better than ever. And it's all about this comeback and coming back into like the place you were before. But like before we started talking, like you don't, how you said like it puts your recovery, it makes it a thing in the past as opposed to something that happened that changed your life. But there is this performative sense, because I really felt that too when I had this, like when I knew I was going to have brain surgery. You know, I'm in the ether of the coordination of care, so I didn't know when it was going to happen. And I sort of felt this feeling like I think it was more of a societal narrative than like my crazy entrepreneur friends, like to sort of be heroic and do things. So I felt like it was a very radical move to make the decision to be still, to heal, and to not cause stress. And I knew that I could do that. And also, I thought it was interesting because you also talked about letting people down too. But I felt like that was a really radical move for me to do. So did you feel that was radical? And then talk to me a little bit more about how you felt you were letting people down. Because isn't the best like, oh, I did this and I took care of myself, and now look at me, I'm in this next phase. Like, that's also a journey to be celebrated too.
Yeah, well, it's a deep question. The feelings of letting people down were because some of them felt let down, and they felt like, why would you do this? Why would you? We all agreed, didn't we? And it was kind of like in a marriage, one person wants to divorce, the other doesn't. Well, wait a minute, it was till death do us part. Well, except that for half the people in the country, it doesn't work that way, or more. And some people, it's 3 and 4 and 5. So life changes. We grow in different ways. And the other part for me too, it wasn't like some people in a similar story where kind of while I'm in the hospital, while I'm in recovery, I'm planning my next phase. Like, because people say, what are you going to do next? I said, heal.
Yeah.
When I stepped down, I literally was in between hip surgeries. So I was 6 weeks after, roughly 6 weeks after.
So you stepped down, but gingerly. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
You stepped down one step at a time.
Exactly. So I still had a lot of recovery yet. I just had the first hip done. They say that's like a full year before you're really back. And now I was about to have the second one done. which was extremely painful. So I was like, I'm still, guys, you don't understand. I am still in the thick of all this stuff.
Right.
It's not like it's way, wow, that was like 3 years ago you went through all of that. No, this is quite fresh, let alone my mother had just passed, let alone the marriage. So that was a challenging time because so many people felt personally affected by my decision.
Right.
So as a caring person who didn't want them to feel bad, I kept my office where it was, and I kept going to the office for quite a while to feel because I didn't quit the company. I still stayed on as a consultant for a couple more
Right.
years. Actually, I wasn't gone. I
Amazing.
didn't suddenly
Right.
leave and just I was
Right.
like missing in action. But yeah, and I had similar to you of I had worked basically all the years I was going through these things. I was still flying about 100,000 miles a year.
Oh my gosh.
And so that meant trips to Europe. Before I had the surgery
Yeah.
for cancer, when I got the diagnosis, I'm immediately thinking, he was telling me within about a month he wanted to do the surgery. And this was towards the end of 2009. And I immediately remember, oh, wow, I'm supposed to go to the UK for at least a week for kind of a train the trainer program for HeartMath. And
Right.
so I mentioned to him, I said, well, look, I'm committed to this, but I really can change. I really can get out of it. If this is in any way going to risk anything for me, trust me, I'll get out of it. But I'm committed. So what do you think about this trip? And he said, no, I think you should be fine. You can go ahead and do the trip and we'll do the surgery when you get back. And that was actually the best news about that was he was clearly not that concerned about it.
Right.
If
Yes.
he had been really worried, he would have said, no, I really can't let
Right.
you do that. But the fact that he was fine with me, that's a significant trip from California to London,
Yes.
jet lag and
Yeah.
everything else. That's not, can I drive to Sacramento? And that's a 2-hour drive. It's quite a bit
Right.
different. So that kind of gave me some relief before the trip, and then a little more relief even going into the trip, that to have caregivers who have that level of compassion and sensitivity, that's a big deal when these things are going on. And I guess that's one of my lessons too, is that with the curveballs, and there were so many, I found myself kind of unconsciously pulled towards where is their compassion? Where are my helpers? Where are my support system?
Well, and sometimes like what I was really surprised by is who ends up being on your support team is not necessarily who, it's not the most obvious. It's not like the usual suspects sometimes. Like I was very surprised who was on my support team. And some people like I'm still very close with, and other people were literally there for me in that moment. And now we're just, but they were like so pivotal at that moment too. So it's I just remember curiosity being my main feeling. Even when I was in the midst of like trying to figure out what was going on, I just always wanted to remain curious. And that was always something like curious. And then some of the people who weren't on my support team, when I started to heal, I'm like, oh, I wonder like if we'll ever see each other again. Cause it is weird because they say people don't know what to say, but then people say some like really silly things too. I wish that it was like, nobody knows what to say, so they don't say anything would be amazing. But sometimes people say things that are just like so confounding. You're like I know I can relate to it because like I would meet people and I would say, oh, I'm having brain surgery. So like the 3 ways those conversations would go is, oh my God, I know someone who had brain surgery. It was an amazing success. I know someone who had brain surgery. It was just a disaster. And then, oh my God, I can totally relate. I have had this splinter in my finger for like 3 days. And I'm like, oh,
yeah,
tell
so
me
similar.
all about your splinter. I'm just like, okay, bitch. Like, are you kidding me? Like, but I totally get it. So HeartMath is about heart, mind, and brain coherence. Let me see if I do a good example of this. Like really, it's not mind and body, it's heart and mind together in heart coherence, providing emotional, which allows you to have like emotional regulation. You know what? I should just say, Bruce, as one of the founding members of HeartMath, like I have the guy on the call. Why don't you tell me what HeartMath is?
And that was perfect. And nothing more needs to be said.
Oh.
Well, so how it started was the founder, a man named Doc Childry, had this belief that he wanted to test out and prove that the heart is actually intelligent. And that the reason we say things to our kids, follow your heart, go play with your heart, just sing from your heart, Heather, you'll be fine.
When you feel something, like you feel like an emotion towards your kid, your heart swells. Like You feel it in your heart.
Exactly. So there's so many examples, heartbreak, where we ascribe to the heart a power beyond just being a pump. But in the Western context, Western medicine, it had been dumbed down to being a fantastical pump. It's an amazing pump. It's only a pump, though. So don't be thinking religious. Don't be thinking poetic. Don't be thinking romantic. Don't be thinking bravery, courage, intuition, all those good things that for millennia, all civilizations had ascribed to the heart. And then some doctors in the West say that's wrong. It's just a pump. But it's an amazing pump. Give it credit. Yeah. Awesome pump. Way to go, pump. So it was a joke. So we came along, and the founder, again, believed that there was a connection between this resisting of the heart as anything more than a pump, this telling people, don't bring your heart to work because you make bad decisions. That was quite a thing for quite a while, right? And it still is to some degree. And why do marriages break up? One or both partners, their heart's not in it anymore. They're not willing to get past the conflicts and keep going with their heart. What's the number one reason? This has been true for 25, 30 years at least, that people quit jobs. They don't feel appreciated or valued by their immediate supervisor. They feel I don't feel seen. You don't get me. Why would I work here when the guy or the person who is supervising me doesn't get me? That's my heart. I can't. So we said there's a connection between all these things, and we're not valuing the heart. So guess what? Marriages end, jobs end, things don't work properly because you haven't put your heart in, because we're somehow accepting this idea, well, the heart's just a pump. It's not worthy of more reverence than that. So we said, but to prove that, because that just sounds like another spiritual system coming down the road from California, like the world needs more self-help systems from California. And we said, we're going to do it different because we're going to use mainstream science, and we're going to find out what we find out. We had certain things we were looking for, but that didn't mean we'd find them, and we found things we weren't expecting. But yes, ultimately we discovered that the heart and brain as organs, as independent organs, are actually trying to be integrated. They're trying to line up. And the heart and our breath are also trying to line up. And line up is a simple non-scientific term, obviously. Align or become coherent is what we just began to call it, because we learned that when we start to manage our emotions, start to breathe in a steady rhythm, and start to feel more gratitude towards life, or just be kind to someone who needs your kindness, or anything we think of as heart value or a heart feeling. When we do those two things together, we are literally gaining control of the rhythmic pattern of our heart moment by moment. Now, why does that matter? That sounds like a pretty big deal just on its own. Heart disease still the number one killer of, even with all the other terrible things that we can die from, heart disease maintains its number one status. And so that sounds like a big deal from that standpoint. But then we started diving deeper and deeper and deeper, starting in the early 90s, into what's really going on in the heart. Is it really intelligent? Is there a way to prove that somehow? And we found so many things through our own research, let alone collaborating with others. For example, the fact that there are tens of thousands, at least 40,000 neurons, little, what we used to call brain cells. But now you can't call them brain cells because they're kind of all over the body. So neurons, which are functioning like a little brain inside the heart. That was discovered by scientists in Canada and Montreal, I believe, 30 years ago. And that guy became part of our advisory board. That research that discovered these complex neural networks, as they're known, processing information locally. That information gets sent to the brain. That was all figured out like 30 years ago.
What?
So that was kind of like, yeah, exactly. What?
That is
another big one that I've always loved is that, the heart and brain are in constant communication. So it's not like they are separate in any way. There are multiple pathways which the heart and brain talk to each other. But this is the next shocker. There is 4 times more information coming up from the heart to the brain than what goes from the brain down to the heart. 4 times more. There's electrical information from every time the heart beats. There's magnetic information from when it beats. There's rhythmic information. If the heart's beating super fast, that's one kind of information. If the heart is slow, that's another kind of information. There's biochemical information because the heart's a hormonal gland. The heart produces hormones we used to think could only get produced in the brain or elsewhere. Oxytocin is produced in the heart. The mother hormone, the love hormone, is produced in the heart. So So the picture began over some years, of course, began to
Yes.
change into, okay, you got neurons in there. Scientists are calling it a little brain. That's starting to get close to intelligent. It's aggregating, receiving all this information from all over the body and from outside the
Right.
body. That's what
Yes.
that's what the heart does. And then it feeds that information in the form of blood, oxygen, or biochemical messages to the brain and other parts of the body. It's pretty wild. It is fantastical, but it's so much more than a pump.
It
So,
is.
yeah.
Well, I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter and I got to have an early ultrasound because you would have those typically at 20 weeks, but I had one early, like very early. And her heart was beating, but her brain wasn't developed yet. Like your heart starts beating before
Yeah.
your brain is even there. And I was just like, how is this even happening? Like, I just think it's amazing. So, and it's its own little electrical system, right? Like I had a yoga instructor once and she was talking about heart coherence and she's like, your heart can radiate energy up to 7 feet in front, like around you. And I'm like, oh my God, is that like what we call the aura? Is it different from is that why when you meet somebody, you get a good vibe check from them? Like, oh, this is someone who's going to be fun and interesting to talk to, or I should probably cross the street. This guy looks desperate or something like that. Is that all part of that system too?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all very connected. So yes, the heart, every time it beats, one of the functions as it's contracting is an electrical signal is being generated. That's what the
Yeah.
electrocardiogram is. It's a EKG. That's a signal. It's like a little spurt of electrical energy. There's a magnetic component to that as well. And so anything that's living, a plant, actually non-living, the wires in your house, the activity of electricity passing through something creates a field around it. That's how it works. Electrons flow through wires or through the body, but a field
Right.
is being created outside of that. And so we
Amazing.
figured out, and it all depends on how sensitive the equipment is. In terms of how far it goes, it probably goes out infinitely, but we can't
Oh,
measure.
right.
We can't
Yes.
measure that to the distance called infinite. And so, with the current technology found in hospitals that can measure the heartbeat, it can measure it at least three feet away. A lot of people quote a lot of different things, but the HeartMath position on this has been it's easily measurable with current technology at 3 feet away from the body. But just think about that for a moment. You're often
Right.
within 3 feet of another person.
Right.
And to our point, that 3 feet isn't literally where it stops. That's where the machine can't measure it anymore.
Right.
It's the limitation of the technology. So theoretically, the field is going farther than 3 feet, but we know we can measure it at 3 feet. So just thinking about the 3 feet, you're within 3 feet of people all the time. In line at the grocery store, and in line for the airplane, at home, in a school. You're always, and again, assuming that there's not an artificial. It's not like somebody said, oh, don't radiate any farther than 3 feet. Like
right.
social distance, heart distance, no more than 3 feet, either direction.
1 yard.
No one's saying that.
Yes.
So in fact, it's radiating more. And in fact, what we began to learn was when you were in a more loving state, what's being radiated is completely different in quality than when we're in a frantic state, a frustrated state. And let me give a visual to your listeners.
Yeah.
So how we discovered this was through something called heart rate variability. And anybody watching this that has got any kind of wearable health tracker is probably measuring something called HRV, which is heart rate variability, what I just mentioned. So in 1992, we started using heart rate variability to measure the changes going on in a person's emotional state and physiological state. And we discovered through testing ultimately thousands of people, if we asked people to just sit there calmly in a lab or wherever they were and focus on things that frustrated them in their life, the pattern of how the heart was beating looked chaotic. It looked kind of like an earthquake pattern. If you also ask the same person, and this we found to be true for thousands and thousands of people, to change their focus and instead of thinking about all the things that pissed them off, pardon my expression, in life, to instead focus on what do you appreciate? The puppy in the family, the kitties, the garden, the grandma, the granddad, your favorite sports team, nature, snowfall, skiing, whatever it is. If you focus on things you appreciate, that same heart that moments ago looked all chaotic as you were feeling frustrated, now your heart becomes this beautiful, smooth wave. Beautiful, smooth wave.
Amazing.
And we discovered that this was true for every human being. This wasn't just our subjects in a lab somewhere, that anyone, when you are feeling out of sync, i.e., frustrated, anxious, overwhelmed,
Right.
worried, the heart is, there's this internal chaos, and the heart's beating in this very out of control, very disordered rhythm. However,
Right.
the same person feel joy right now, feel like I'm staring at a forest of bamboo trees. And I saw it about a month and a half ago. It had been cut down to the ground. And the
Yeah.
person who did that looked at it and said, it'll grow back. And is now 7 feet tall, this
It's
thick
amazing.
bamboo
Yeah.
forest in front of me. And there was nothing there not that many weeks ago. And so I have the joy of like not only looking at the beauty of the bamboo, but also remembering I've got nature going wild right outside the window here. So that gives me
Yes.
joy. That gives me appreciation. So our research showed any human being starts to feel some appreciation, especially if you kind of slow down your breathing at the same time and just really savor, just feel the beauty of the sun, the
Yes.
puppy, the partner, whatever. Your heart turns into this, it's called a sine wave, and it's literally called a coherent wave. It's a coherent
And
wave,
then
whereas the other one was incoherent.
so then what happens with its communication to the brain when the heart is feeling chaotic?
Well,
What's
think of
going
it
on
as,
with its relative to the brain then?
so remember what I said a moment ago, where I said, like, there's 4 times more information going north to the brain than coming
Right.
south. So the heart rhythm, the beating pattern of your heart, is one of those things that's being sent. And how do I know that? You could put an electrode on any part of your body, including your pinky toe, and it would be no problem at all to pick up the heartbeat. How do I know that?
Amazing.
Not because I'm a cardiologist, because anybody in healthcare knows that. Because the
Wow.
heartbeat is that powerful. It's by far the dominant electrical system in the body. It's 60 times stronger in amplitude than the brain, the heart is. So the heart's pounding away this very strong electrical signal. There's nothing else like it in the
Right.
body. It's the main power plant. It's also pounding away in a rhythmic pattern. Name another organ that you can feel beat. Oh, right. I can't name one.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's the
Yes.
dominant rhythm generator. So
Oh,
when
wait, I
we
feel like I'm feeling my appendix right now, but you'll probably tell me that's just my heartbeat.
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, that is true. You
Yeah.
can stub your toe or cut your toe or something, and you feel a beating down there. It's
Yes.
not the toe beating; it's the pulse,
Yeah.
the blood being shunted down there to begin the healing. So all this was true. So how this relates to coherence is, again, as I said, which rhythm do you want going from the heart to your brain? Even
Right.
without
Oh,
being a
yeah. I
scientist,
want the sine rhythm.
I want the
Yes.
sine wave. I want the smooth
Yeah.
rhythm. I want the coherent one.
Yeah.
And we were able to establish, and even other researchers before HeartMath even came along, had discovered that when the rhythm of the heart is in this sort of out of sync rhythm, it desynchronizes the brain. This was discovered in the 60s, way before HeartMath. And so the term for that was cortical inhibition. The cortex, which is about 80% of our brain, is literally inhibited because this pattern of kind of chaos coming from the heart causes it to be disoriented.
Right.
Think about it. Think about it when you're very upset or really
Yes.
frustrated or really angry. You can say something you regret and you're in prison for the next 6 months with your spouse. You can make a really bad decision and later on think, what was I thinking? Well,
Yes.
you weren't thinking at your best because there was too much
Right.
noise in your system. And even physically, you can do stupid things. You can bang into things and break glasses, whatever. So
Right.
all that was validated with that research that had been done decades earlier, let alone ours came along. So heart brain coherence became a thing because we began to realize the more we get our heart in coherence, which does mean managing our emotions. So the HeartMath
Yes.
system is all about emotional regulation, emotional management, using this innate rhythmic patterning of the heart as an ally in the process. You get that
Amazing.
system vibrating and beating in a coherent way. Your brain says thank you, because what's driving it is positive emotion that's driving it. It's not just breath. We're not just doing a breath
Right.
technique to get there. Yes, you can do a breath technique and it will help, but to really get there, you have to change your attitude, and that's what
Right.
appreciation or compassion do.
Well, I think about like when I have a gratitude practice and I'm really good about just thinking of like 3 or 5 things every day, just how overall, just generally, everything just lifts. Like I get a little lift in life. And now I
Exactly.
understand that there's something like very sciencey electrical happening in my body too. I love it when you learn like you're like how does having a gratitude journal really help you? Like how does that work? Because what's so interesting to me is you're saying the emotions are mainly more in your heart than in your brain.
Not exactly.
No?
No, I didn't mean
Okay.
that. No, emotions, you can feel them anywhere. Where they're produced, there's no question there are centers in the brain where emotions are being produced, but it was assumed for a long time that's the only place they're being produced. And yet you
Mm,
use the example of holding a child. When my
yeah.
daughter was born 38 and a half years ago, and I held her for the first time, my heart was going crazy. And every other part of me was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I'm holding her. Wow. There weren't those words. It was just like
Yeah.
disoriented and in awe and in joy. And this is amazing. All that. So all that is true. So I guess, again, back to the coherence and the impact of these things. One more facet I want to share is that there is a biochemical element to all this, which is also profound. So we found out that just like the feeling frustrated or distressed out causes this obvious change in the patterns of the heart, they get
Right.
chaotic. That signals is sent to the brain, causing cortical inhibition, meaning the cortex is being inhibited. You can't do it; it can't function as well. But there's also a biochemical aspect. So whenever anyone is feeling a stress emotion, for any reason, you look at your phone, you get an alert on your screen, and it's a news thing that looks scary, or it's from
Right.
the name of somebody that drives you crazy
Right.
and
Yes.
haven't even opened the message yet. Scientists in the early 90s discovered that reaction, that moment of that feeling of being triggered,
Yes.
is like the on button, what you have just pushed through your reaction, to start a cascade of 1,400 biochemical changes in your body. Because your body is in that moment, based on your reaction,
Unbelievable. Right.
is saying threat, threat, warning, warning, gear up to fight or flee, gear up. So these biochemicals, the stress biochemicals, are being shunted into your bloodstream because there is a threat at hand. Now, if the threat's only
Right.
an alert, you got a problem, because what are you going to do? You're going to hit your phone with a hammer to get rid of the threat? No.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we're responding to life all the time as threats, when in fact they aren't threats at all. But they aren't actual threats that actually
Right.
need us to kill something or run from something.
Yeah.
But we have all these reactions. So anyway, as you can tell, there's a
Thank
lot
you
of
for
fun
explaining
science
that
about it.
without using saber-tooth tiger because I'm like, let's update this. Let's update this from the saber-tooth because I don't. But thank you for explaining that without saying.
My example now is when the AI buddy, which I never signed up for, the AI note taker, shows
Oh
up
yes.
in a Zoom call, and I can't get rid of it. And I tried to delete the account I never opened
Yes.
6 months ago, and it keeps showing up. So that's
Yes.
my saber-tooth tiger. That
That is so
that
funny.
that thing called Bruce's AI. I want to kill that thing. It won't die. It will not.
Oh,
It will
that is
not die.
no, it won't. And there's no way to turn it off. And I'm just like, is
Exactly.
this legal? Okay, so I'm so curious. So you have all this intelligence around how your heart and brain work together. So when you were in the thick of everything, how did you employ that?
Well, I wouldn't call it the upside exactly, but kind of like you implied, everything can have a silver lining. It's just hard to see
Yeah.
it a lot as it's happening. But and even though I said I was traveling 100,000 miles a year, that's true. But I also had a lot of hours waiting for the next procedure, or in recovery from the last procedure, or waiting for the next treatment, where was supposed to relax beforehand, or
Right.
after the
Yes.
infusion, I should be relaxing. My lifestyle was really different. Even
Yes.
though I was doing my best to keep on going, keep on teaching, facilitating, and still be the CEO of HeartMath and show up for meetings and whatnot, there was a lot of time spent in non-normal, more
Right.
relaxed, more
Yes.
reflective times. And so little by little, you do that long enough with kind of a series of things. And that's when I started to feel I had a lot of time to meditate. I had a lot of time to tune into my body and reflect on
Right.
what do I want to do? What do I want to be? There were enough things I couldn't participate in that I had extra free time sometimes, quite a
Right.
bit more actually. And that gave me time to just kind of, where is this going? Where do I want to be, if assuming I can make
Mm.
it through this? So, is that answered your question?
Yeah, it does, because it's like, I think it's like one of the things, it's easy, and people expect you to be afraid. They expect you to be mad. Like they'll be, so you can easily go off on, because when you have a lot going on, it's, you can get ahead of yourself sometimes. If you think you have
Yeah.
a deadly diagnosis hanging out there, you're going to be thinking about your mortality. Like, and so one of the things that I heard in that is, it's like, how do you experience what's going on, and all the profounds, the ups, the downs, the like, did not see this coming kind of moments. And at the same time, you're not getting caught up, getting too ahead of yourself. Like it sounds to me
Yeah.
like it helped to keep you not getting ahead of yourself, like in that present moment. Because if you get ahead of yourself, you can create all sorts of crazy stories in your head about
Yeah.
how things can go. And I just remember being like, there were times I would be like upset, like sadness was probably my main emotion. And I would try to say, oh no, you got to turn this around. But I remember like the first time I really allowed myself to feel it, I named it, I validated it, because it was such a genuine feeling. And then I was like, but do I have any facts to support this? And then I was like, no, 100% of the time I did it with my health. And what was so interesting is I could literally like feel my brain like cooling down, like my face. And then I would be like very calm. And I remember thinking, what is this? Like, this feels so healthy, because I'm literally processing the emotion.
Hmm.
And then once it's processed, it's sort of like you've experienced it. Now, even if I wanted to get back into that feeling, I can't, because it's gone. And so I don't know if that's like part of her, but it seems to keep you like in that present moment, not getting too far ahead of yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I have no idea what anybody else goes through and the level of pain they have. When I had the first hip done, my doctor came in after the surgery and started giving me kind of like a dad talk almost. It sounded like he's like talking to me about pain thresholds and how people manage pain and all this. I didn't know where he was going with it. And he says his usual patient, who was much older than I was, his average patient was in their 70s and I was in my late 50s. He said the average one has lost about 20 to 30% of the cartilage in their hip joint. And so that feels like that's bone on bone. You got the cushion's gone, or at least a lot of it's gone.
Right.
And he said, I don't know how different people deal with pain because you've lost between 70 and 80% of the cartilage in your hip. And the other one's probably going to be the same. And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
I have no idea. This is new information to me. I have no idea how I'm dealing with the pain. I did feel like, however, and reflecting on that later, that I had trained myself for so many years to learn to go to a positive feeling, which is always
Mm,
more peaceful and more coherent for the body than to be in a chaotic feeling. When
right.
you are feeling peaceful, just taking a moment to just feel quiet inside, or to
Mm.
feel happy because my daughter just came to visit me, or excited because my brother's coming to visit me.
Your
Allow yourself.
38 and a half year old daughter just came to visit you.
Now
Yeah.
she is. Well, she
Yeah.
wasn't that old then, but yeah. So all of those moments were incredibly rich. And so that's doing a whole different thing inside our body. It's the biochemistry to help us heal. So
Right.
I was trying to be in positive states more and more. And I did have interesting windows. 3 hours to be attached to an antibiotic drip bag. You can go drive yourself freaking crazy. Like, damn,
Right. What
this
did
is
you
bored.
do for those 6 hours a day?
Well, it was three. It was 3 and 3. It wasn't 6 all in one.
Right.
While having a drip into my arm, I could do that. I was not terribly proud of the fact that I could do that. I was like, okay,
No, that's such a badass thing.
I
Like,
know it
that's
is. It
like,
does sound like
yeah, totally.
sound
You're like,
bad.
what is that on your screen? Oh, just my IV drip.
Yeah,
No big deal.
it's just a staph infection in my blood. Oh,
Yeah.
it's MRSA, which is the bad kind of
Oh,
staph infection.
no, you had MRSA?
I had MRSA,
Oh
but
my
see, part
gosh.
of the thing that was, I don't know if it was the blessing. I don't know if it was angels that were helping me, but MRSA is the bad kind of staph. For people in your audience
Yes.
who don't know this, it means the kind of staph that is particularly virulent because it doesn't respond to antibiotics. It only responds to very few. So it can easily get out of control. So literally an hour before I was being discharged from the hospital, because I had the staph infection and they hadn't found the source of it, so they had to insert this PICC line. This looked like stereo jack hanging out of my bicep.
Right.
So that's what I went home with. Literally an hour before I was to walk out of the hospital, my regular nurse comes in, now dressed in a bright yellow hazmat outfit. And I'm like, what happened? Is there something going on in the ward? And she says, no, it's you. I said, what do you mean it's me? I was the culprit because they had discovered it was MRSA. So it's like, seriously? Okay. Well, why not go for the ultimate staph infection instead of just be like, that's the badass. Do the badass staph infection.
Yeah.
Just, you don't want to just be an ordinary garden variety. But here's the irony. I never felt that sick with a staph infection. And a lot of people that have had staph infections could never say that. What do you mean you didn't feel sick? I really didn't. So it was a little bit of a disconnect. Like they kept telling me it was life-threatening. And I'm thinking, if this is life-threatening, this isn't that bad. If I have to go this way, meaning this wasn't agony. And so I was blessed in many of these phases where I wasn't in excruciating pain. Now, it was different with the hips. There were times where there would be an ache in my hip, and I'm thinking, this is the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. What bone on bone actually feels like is this agonizing, deep, searing ache that you just, oh man, I don't want anybody to ever have to experience this. Oh, it's just like, oh.
Yes.
So I did have that at times, but it wasn't like that all the way through either. So how much of that was, well, dude, you've been meditating with your heart and on love and kindness for 20 years already at that point.
Right.
So a lot of it was that I knew how to get through tough times better than a lot of people might.
Right.
But
and I love how you do a loving kindness meditation, because it's like doing things for you, but then doing things for the people in your house and in your town and then your state and then the country and then the whole world. By the time I'm done doing one of those meditations, I literally feel like my heart, like I visualize myself standing like on my little front yard, and you can just see me. Like there's just this little tiny pinprick of light from one of the satellites. Like, but it is that fullness. And it really comes from that sort of not being introspective. It's just more like, I have this thing I can give. I can just say, I hope you're happy. I hope you're at peace. I hope you're not angry. I hope you're not jealous, like those kinds of things. It's like, it's such a beautiful lesson. It's such a beautiful reminder of a way to live. And then when you feel like you're giving that to someone else, like I love those. I listened to one on YouTube, and it's like the many layers of it. And just at the end, I'm just like, I didn't know I had this much to give, like how much energy you have. And that's because, again, I'm creating those sine waves. It's sending up good vibrations into my brain saying, look, it's all good down here. It's like, it's all good down here, brain. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And I would add that in my experience that there was a lot of, I don't at all want to paint that 2-year period. It was just like, felt like being at the spa. There were very serious moments of anxiety and fear. And absolutely, I've often talked about this example where the surgery happened. The doctor was relieved. It was only a stage 1 tumor. It had not attached. It was still floating around inside my bladder. I'm getting this TMI for some people, but sorry. Us people that have had serious things like you have had, Heather, and I have had, you talk openly about this stuff, and when you can find somebody who is not intimidated or put up, it's kind of like, do you mind if I just share a little too much detail?
Yeah.
So all that was going on. But again, the doctor's view was that this is what I expected. It wasn't advanced. Right. It was a slow growing tumor. That was really good news. Slow growing. I'd probably had it for a couple of years is what they thought.
Amazing.
And it had been just gradually building. So it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like suddenly there's this tumor and it's taking over, which a lot of people go through that. Exactly that. I didn't have that. So I was very fortunate. And yet after the surgery, it's a messy surgery. It's an extremely painful surgery. It's like, I wouldn't wish that on any man or woman, but many have to go through it. So there was a major test that was going to happen about a month after the surgery. And I was feeling positive. I was feeling like, he's a good guy. He's a good doctor. I trust this guy a lot. I think he's done a good job. He's been very authentic and he's been very integral with what he said he would do. It's happened. And so I was feeling confident about the whole thing. And I'm waiting for him to call me a month or 6 weeks after the surgery with the results of a certain test, thinking that I've got it. I'm feeling good. Everything's fine. I'm not worried about it. And then the phone rings and it's him. And right away, he eases my mind and says, "Good news, Bruce. The test came back negative." And I was feeling like I was so positive it wasn't going to be an issue. But at that moment, I had this huge sigh of relief. Like, even though I was positive, even though I didn't have the conscious worries, I still was holding on to something I didn't know. Yes. And so that moment was like, wow, this has been hard. You're doing your best to stay positive, but there was all that in there. Of course it would be. Of course it would be.
Well, I love that too. Like when you're in certain uncertainty and then you get the certainty, right? And then it ends up being a happy ending. Whew. I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
But even if it was like, okay, Bruce, not great news, there would have, I think that, I remember just thinking, no matter which way it goes, like seriously, I will be so grateful to know what it is I'm dealing with, because then I know, right? It was like the uncertainty was it's just like Tom Petty says, the waiting is the hardest part. Like seriously, like it really is. So you talk a lot about how creativity is encoded in our DNA. So were you a performer before, or were you like someone who said, I'm going to start to sing and dance in my 50s? Like, what's your story?
So at age 19, I came into the world's longest running musical in New York City as one of the lead roles, a show called The Fantastics. It's a love story about a boy and a girl. I came in as the boy. The show had been running already for a dozen years. So I was coming in many years later, and it stayed open for another 40 years after I was in the show. So that point of my life, I had this whirlwind starting senior year in high school of somebody believing I could sing, giving me the lead in the high school musical. I didn't audition for the lead. I never auditioned at all. I didn't aspire to be in that show specifically.
What was the play? What was the show?
A show called Carousel. It's an old Broadway show from the 50s. And when the guy told me, this is the show this year, but you can't tell anybody. You're going to play the lead role, but you can't tell anybody. It's a show called Carousel, and you can't tell anybody. I thought, I don't know what any of this means. I have no idea what Carousel is. I am not a theater kid. But okay, you seem to be confident in my abilities, and you're going to work with me for the next 7 months. The show wasn't coming up till May, and this was like October. So that all happened, and that year I learned how to sing solos. Literally, I was sang solos for the first time in my life, and then did the lead role finally in May of that year. My cousin David Cryer, who performed for many years in the Phantom of the Opera and many other shows on Broadway, he was a brilliant singer, actor. He came to see me in the show one night, and I was both thrilled that we had a Broadway star in the audience and petrified because we had a Broadway star in the audience.
Right.
At least we had the same last name, so I knew he was there because he genuinely wanted to see how his baby cousin was doing. And he gave me a big vote of confidence and said I had a gift and he'd help me. And one thing led to another. It wasn't through him directly, but 2 years later is when, literally 2 years after my first time being on stage in a show of any kind, I'm playing the lead role in the longest running musical in the world in New York City. So it was kind of like, how did I get here? How did I get here? And
were you like singing in the hallways? Like, how did someone even know? Or were you like in a chorus class in high school?
The latter. So
okay.
I was a trumpet player. I've been musical my whole life. At age 8, I picked up the trumpet in the elementary school. I was good enough. My parents decided to hire a trumpet teacher, so I was getting extra lessons.
Yeah.
I was never going to be a professional trumpet player, but I was pretty good at it, and I loved music and all this. So my junior year in high school, they hire a new vocal music teacher who starts doing shows, Broadway shows and opera in the school. The school only had dark, heavy dramas, never fun and shows. And so I'm one of the trumpet players playing in the orchestra for these shows, one after another through the year. And by the end of the year, I'm finally like, man, these are my friends up there. They look like they're having a really good time. And I go up to the man who is the conductor of all this and who I knew quite well because I was in the orchestra for his shows. And I said, thank you for the opportunity to play in the orchestra and again. And but how do I get up on stage? Because it looked really fun up there.
Yeah.
And he smiled, knowing smile, and he said, you just sign up for the chorus class. That's it.
Amazing.
I take everybody. So new school year rolls around and he's auditioning all the new kids, not auditioning. He's just having them sing to see what they could do. What help are they going to need? Could they be in a chorus later on or whatever?
Right.
So I was one of those. I was one of the new kids.
Amazing.
And then he starts working with me more. And I didn't know he was like working with me a lot more. But then after 6 or 8 weeks of this, I feel like I'm literally learning to sing in French, Italian, German. Like something's going on here, but I still had no idea what was going on. I was just like, I'm loving this. I love music. I'm musical. I could read music. I all that.
Right.
And then he takes me aside in the back of the school auditorium because kids were now figuring out Mr. Pickett spending a lot of time with Bruce. What's going on? And that's when he revealed the plan for the show. And so
that's incredible. What is your favorite musical?
Well, it would be hard for me not to say The Fantastics because not only did I perform it 800 times in New York City.
Oh my gosh.
Not all at one time, but 64 performances as my summer job between sophomore and junior years in college. They hired me just for the summer because they wanted me in the show. They knew I was in college. And they said, could you replace the guy? He wants to take the summer off and do a tour. Would you come in for 8 weeks while you're on vacation?
How the universe, like, oh, this guy's going on vacation. Here we have this kid who's on his summer break. Like, that's incredible.
And that show I had seen when I was 9 years old. My cousin David, who I just mentioned, David Cryer, he was one of the leads in that show. I was 9 years old. First show I ever saw in New York was that show in the same theater. 10 years later, I get to meet the guys who wrote the show, who knew my cousin very well, who asked me to audition. And then they said, we love you. You're great. We don't have an opening at the moment, but as soon as we do, we'd like you to come in the show. And I kind of like, well, you do know I'm a sophomore in college, right? It's not like I'm a professional actor in New York yet. Yeah. And then it worked out, as I said. And that guy in the summer of 1973 who took vacation, did a tour, he and I are very good friends to this day.
That is just the most amazing. What's your favorite song to sing in the Fantastics? Because I'll listen to it this afternoon.
There is a song at the end of the show called They Were You, where the boy and the girl have fallen in love. The boy gets to win the girl in the end of the first act. And it looks like happily ever after. And the fathers are happy and everything's moonlight and romance. And then it all falls apart in the second act. And the girl slaps the boy and the boy decides, well, I've had one conquest. There must be a lot more out there in the world. And I'm going to go see the world. And his alter ego is warning him, no, it's not going to be that. It's not like going to be like that, kid. You're so naive. You have no idea. And sure enough, the alter ego is right. And he comes back tattered and beaten down by life. Meanwhile, the girl had fallen in love with somebody else and he breaks her heart. And so you got two unhappy, sad kids.
Oh, right.
And they see each other and there's this hauntingly beautiful song that they sing to each other. And even thinking about it, each time I think about it, I choke up. And I first sang that song in 1973. And so they sing this song called They Were You, which is basically the boys saying, I had all these things they kept chasing. The dreams were you. She sings her verse, similar sentiment. All those dreams I thought I had, they were you. And so they're coming together.
Oh, God. Like, that is just, I can just see the stage too. Like, it's just like so beautiful, the whole thing.
And the music, the song itself is just hauntingly beautiful. I can't not hear it in my head as I share this story. I can't not see myself on the stage doing it. Yes. And I tear up. I actually did it not that long ago in New York City with an actress who I'd actually played the show with 40 years earlier. We reunited when I moved back to New York and we started performing together. And a few times we sang that song again and we hadn't performed it in 40 years. And we sang it again and we'd be looking at each other and thinking, God, whoever would have predicted this 40 years ago, This
Yeah.
was your first job. This was my, when I was with her, it was the second time I went in the show, but it was only like my fourth show. And who would have ever imagined 40 years from now, we will be singing this song again in the Times Square at a theater, which is also a church in the Times Square of New York. Like,
Oh
whoever
my
could have,
gosh.
that's way too crazy.
Life. Like
Yeah,
it really is. It's delicious.
exactly.
It really
Exactly.
is. I have a little piece of art that says life. That it's delicious. And I'm like, it really is. Like that story. I just love this. So Bruce Cryer, I know that you do lots of different things now. You're a consultant, you work with NASA engineers, front care healthcare workers. If people are like, how do I learn more about this Bruce guy? How can I work with him? How do they get in touch with you, Bruce?
Thank you for asking. Well, I do use my name on all social media, my actual name, not some handle or something else. So, and I have a website. So everything is Bruce Cryer. So the
Bruce
website is
Cryer. Okay.
brucecryer.com, Facebook, Bruce Cryer, LinkedIn, Bruce Cryer, Instagram, Bruce Cryer. My YouTube channel is not my name. It's Renaissance Human, but which is the term I came up with, but Bruce Cryer. So yes, I coach. I'm still singing. I'm still dancing. I'm doing all that stuff. And it's amazing that I get to still dance in spite of titanium hips. But for those people
Yes.
who pity me, I say, wait a minute. I'm the guy with titanium hips.
Right. Yes.
I am vibrato. I will
Yes.
harmonize your world.
Right.
So that's it. So I love the heart coherence method. I teach it in groups. I teach it one-on-one, online. I'll be doing a course for the Shift Network starting in July for 7 weeks around
Amazing.
heart coherence and this vibrato, the waves of how we can release negative energy and let it go so we
Yes.
can leave
No
better.
titanium hips needed. You can do it with or without.
That's right.
It's
Those
just
are
a little bit easier with. We
completely
can
optional. If
say
you want to
yes.
attend the workshop without titanium hips, you can have them added later. No problem.
It's incredible. Well, this has just been an absolute joy. I can already tell, like, I'm smiling so hard. My cheeks are hurting already. This has been an absolute pleasure learning, especially, I just love the little heart. I feel like I gave my brain a lot of attention, but now I want to give my heart. I have this whole new appreciation. I'm not going to call it my ticker anymore. I got to come up with, because it's way more than a pump.
It is. It is. And it's worthy of your love. And it will become more and more as you love it. And as you try to feel love from it, it'll help your brain more and more.
I love that. Bruce Cryer, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tether.